Shweta, let's address the issue that we were talking about, private equity playing consolidator. And we've seen a lot of buyout deals take place. We've seen a lot of private equity players take management control. Healthcare is a classic example of what we've seen happen with private equity coming in and taking control. Which are the other spaces that look exciting at this point in time from a private equity perspective?
I hate to pick a sector typically because it's, today something is a flavor, today financial services flavor of the season, tomorrow healthcare is, day after industrials is, right? So I think the approach that private equity by and large adopts, including ourselves, is really bottom up, right? So we like, I would say by and large all themes in India, right? Whether it is consumption, healthcare, financial services, all kind of playing the underlying fundamental growth of India, right? Then it is really about the company where there's, where we look at the micro aspects of a company as opposed to just a top-down piece. But I feel all sectors are interesting today. I mean, I spoke about manufacturing, which is a new theme which private equity hasn't done enough of, which is something that we are picking up in a big way. There's healthcare, there's financial services, still a very credit underpenetrated economy, right? So there's a lot you can do on the financial services across spectrum. Microfinance to bank, we've done it all. And, I would say healthcare, again, significant underpenetration both on pharma and services side. So I would say across the board, I think we're excited about it.
Let me link this back to the bull case that you spoke of. The expectation or the assumption was that private equity would really have to be patient capital when they put their money to work in India. Is that starting to change, both in terms of exit opportunities as well as in terms of returns?
Most certainly, yes. So I think the exit environment is far more vibrant than it was even 5 years back, let alone a decade back, right? But having said that, I would still say it's you need to be patient in India. Because it's, while the bull case, and you asked this question earlier, what is the risk? The risk is an execution risk here, right? So while everything will eventually go up, I think there will be bumps along the way, like in any other emerging market, right?
Which is par for course. But Ramesh, let's talk about the exit opportunities. Let's talk about what we've seen happen as far as the IPO pipeline is concerned. What gives you confidence on that side of the story, and how do you see that playing itself out over the next few years?
I don't know much about the IPO market, to be honest. I rarely subscribe to IPOs myself. Secondary markets were offering great bargains, but I'll just add to the point that Harsha said. India's, when Neil Armstrong went to the moon 50 years ago, he said, it's a small leap for man, but a great leap for mankind. He was talking of the great step he made on the moon. I think digitization is a great leap forward. We're not understanding the full impact of what digitization meant. While I was coming in the plane, Shereen, I read this quote which said that in the near future, every product will be manufactured digitally and then physically. So that's a huge change that's taking place, whether in our BPO businesses, whether it's in our manufacturing businesses, whether it's in our country, in terms of delivering services to the corporate citizen. And India is amazingly, even as I speak to you, a leader in digital services, UPI, Aadhaar, Paytm, whatever. It's extraordinary what strides we made in the last 5 years in digitization. So I think there's one theme you want to latch on to this thing, it's digitization.
Digitization, the big theme as far as Ramesh Damani is concerned. Harsha, for the decade, since we are taking a more long-term view here as far as this panel is concerned, one headline that you would chase?
I would chase the Indian consumer, who is a force to reckon with, both within India. We actually see that by virtue of the stock market and the retail participation there. We see that by virtue of the domestic consumption story. But the Indian consumer will be a global force. And we're seeing that with international travel and tourism, where the Indian consumer is already a global force. And we'll see it in many other categories as well. I'd say that it's a great time to be an Indian.
It's a great time to be in India, and it's a great time to be an Indian as well. Aashish, I don't remember the last time I heard global CEOs of luxury brands like Bulgari talking about the fact that India is going to be one of their top 5 markets over the next decade. So that story is clearly booming. I mean, you can't get enough Mercedes off the shelves. You can't get enough watches and bags and so on and so forth off the shelves. How much of that is going to be thematically a theme that you see continuing to play out?
I would still be, so I agree with Harsha on you have to follow Indian consumer and that will be a global force. But I think the Indian consumer is also value conscious, so he's going to invest a lot more, is the hope, and the right thing to do, rather than just consume foreign luxury brands.
Are banks going to find it harder now to get deposits, given the fact that we're seeing a lot of that money coming into the markets?
Well, definitely, yes. That is the case, and that's, I think, one of the reasons why private banks, after outperforming for 2 decades, started underperforming, because it's no longer the first choice of savings for a lot of consumers. And I think that will be the trend going forward.
The headline that you're going to chase, Shweta, over the next decade?
So, I mean, it is actually across the board, right? I mean, for us, India is the investment destination across the globe, right? Pick any country, and I would say that it has some chinks in the armor today, which are challenges. As it stands today, don't see too many of those in India. So I would say, double down on India.
Just chase India.
Double down on India. Double down on India.
Yeah. But Ramesh, on the unfinished agenda, will it matter, for instance, if the next government were to do bank privatization or not? Asset monetization, big pipeline had been laid out. We didn't deliver on that front. I mean, I'm asking from a market's perspective, what will the market factor in terms of expectations or asks from the next government?
I mean, there is some expectation that the government will privatize a lot of its assets. The government has publicly said that. They will do that. But I think more important, we want good corporate governance. We want less corruption, less leakages, which I think this government has already delivered. If they do extraordinarily good privatization, like IDBI Bank is up on the block, if that is done in a fair, transparent manner, I think the market will be extremely enthused by that. And I think that depends on the majority that this government gets finally. If they get a good majority, I think they'll be able to put some thoughts through Parliament, which other governments could not do because of, say, paucity of numbers.
Like what? What would the #1 priority on that front be? What you would like them to do?
No, PSU privatization theme. I'm saying if they actually take that to the next level, the government has said that other than strategic defense and space, they will privatize all the PSUs.
Yeah.
It makes sense to me. But more importantly, is the first step they've taken is to improve the corporate governance. I mean, the corporate governance improved dramatically in those PSUs. So that has enthused the market first on. That will actually be the icing on the cake.
Aashish, to you as well, on the unfinished agenda, what is it that you would like to see being prioritized as far as policy intervention, government decision-making is concerned?
I think for the next decade or so, some incentive to do big-ticket R&D, whether it is setting up large, reputable educational institutions, encouraging more and more R&D, and I think India can afford to do that today. The way we have seen a conglomeration of the country, top 5 groups have a lot of cash flow at their disposal, and I think that can be put to good use with the right kind of government reform. So that's one thing that I would put on the top on unfinished agenda.
Okay, so drive the R&D push. But the government has sort of, said that, look, it's up to the corporate sector to do that. But on the larger issue of private sector capex really taking off, not picking up, taking off, do you expect that to happen over the next few years?
I think definitely, yes. And I think one segment that we didn't speak much about was the energy space. I think the largest capex will be in that space. And I think India
on the renewable side.
On the renewable side. And thermal will also make a comeback given the sheer demand for power that we will have as a nation. On the renewable side, again, I'll say green hydrogen or green energy in general would require a lot of capex R&D as well. So I think that's one theme that can be the largest Indian company a decade from now, could be in the energy space.
Would be in the energy space?
Could be from the energy space.
Could be potentially from the energy space. Harsha, Raghavan, you've already got 2 aircraft. What could your fleet look like given the fact that you're so bullish on the Indian consumer?
Well, India has, a couple hundred airports, and many of them are all very well maintained by the Airports Authority of India and other administrators, but unfortunately underserved or even totally unserved. And there are large population centers who either wish to travel or live in those locations and who need a solution. So we believe that the opportunity to provide air travel, cheap, efficient, and comfortable air travel across every part of India, we believe it's a huge opportunity. And we believe that that's what the Indian consumer needs.